Today we're going to talk about innovation in education through collaboration. And this event is supported, sponsored by Vodafone. So special thanks to them for the courtesy and for helping us put up this event. Education is an inspiring and transformational area activity. All of us are part of education or part of this SIG because of the transformational nature of the whole domain. I'd just like to show you one slide on which has some data on the transformational effect, and maybe yeah. So this is a quick slide on. We all talk of how education can transform and all that. There's a quick slide from the U.S. labor statistics, and it says education pays. That is actually the title of the slide itself, and it talks about different levels of education and the effect of that on both employment and earnings. So the effect of education on earnings is something which all of us are very aware of. We know that if you educate yourself more, you can earn more. But what surprised me about this slide was the effect it had on employment rate. So the slide, I don't know if you can see it, but the slide goes this way. This is lower education and this is doctoral. So this is less than high school. And the chart is actually a nice bar diagram which shows that if you have less education, then there's higher unemployment and lower median income. So that is, I think, something which is finally what education does to an economy, a society, and stuff like that, and the huge transformational role it has to play. But for a country like India, education also means scale, means reaching large numbers of people, means innovation, and that's what we're going to talk about today. It also means technology, because technology will aid that innovation, will help in bringing new aspects or new dimensions of how to deliver and create services for that large population. As part of this event, we have a keynote and then we have a panel discussion. As part of the keynote, we have an inspiring speaker, Anand, to come and talk to us. We all know Anand has been part of the education industry for a long time. Just two quick words of introduction. Anand is founder director of Silvant Advisors, private advisory company. He was former MD and CEO of Manipal Global, and he is also the board of NIT. And he spent a large part of the last 2 decades between technology and education. So he was founder of Microland. So in both these domains, he has built innovation, built companies of scale, build products which have both India and global relevance, and that makes him, I think, the apt speaker to kick off this whole topic on innovation and collaboration, stuff like that. So I'll, with not wasting any more time, would like to invite Anand to kick off.
Am I audible? Or should I use this? Am I okay? Yes. Hanging on to this makes me. There's a column mic, that's okay. I'm audible enough, I suppose. Good afternoon, good evening. That's for people who are collaborating from somewhere in the West. I thought I should start by saying good afternoon. Now, one of the things we need to do is probably bring in technology into these things and what TiE does, so that we probably can have a larger audience from outside Bangalore participating as well. But it's a pleasure and honor. TiE is doing some amazing things, wonderful stuff, and it's particularly delightful to see a special interest group in education. I have had the good fortune of having spent almost the last 8 years in the education sector. It still doesn't have an industry status. So one of the grouses that I have with the government of India, it still doesn't have the industry status. It should get one soon, I hope. The education sector, and one of the interesting things that I have noticed in this is the better this way, okay, is the absolutely perennial enthusiasm and excitement that exists in people in different ways, right? Interesting slide that Murali put up there. If I were to just look at it in a little in a tongue-in-cheek kind of a way, what he did not show, on the right side he showed a graph which went like this, right? The bar chart, correct? Median salary. The other side, it was the other way around. Unemployment, it came this way. Now, if I had only put up a slide which compared 2 different pieces of data in the US, both sides would have been like this, like a V, which is the average debt that's been incurred by students. So how many of you have studied in the US, lived in the US, so you know what I'm talking about, right? The average debt today at undergrad level, post-undergrad qualification is already crossed $20,000. And, sorry? No, that's postgrad and above. For undergrad and above people it's about $25,000 now. And if it's a professional qualification, that's graduate level and above, it's now hitting very, very, very high levels. And what's interesting is that, the US, by the way, the education sector in the US is the third largest in their economy, after healthcare and defense. It's really the third largest. And what's interesting to note there is that debt that's being carried, the total debt that's there, Title IV, which is the US government guaranteed debt, about 4% of that debt is actually held today by people who are more than 60 years of age, right? So there are some interesting, changes that have happened, and why I'm going to tell you why I'm telling you all of this is I'm going to connect it up with the importance of technology and what difference it's going to make, not only in India, but globally, even in places like the US, which is of course the mecca of education, right? And it's going to transform education in a way that we have probably not seen any time before. And probably we've all been waiting for, they say waiting for Godot, right? So we've been waiting for this for a long, long, long time. When I was looking at this topic and I was thinking through what is it that I'm going to share with you, I went through this innovation and education through collaboration. What's exciting about this is the innovation part, obviously, right? Somebody was asking me about MOOCs. Just before we started this, I was chatting with some people, they were talking about MOOCs, and there are some observations on that I would share with you. Obviously, they represent a very visible form of innovation in education. They represent a very exciting and something that people seem to have got their arms around, so to speak, at least in terms of interest, right? But there is a lot more that's happening and a lot more that is yet to happen. So innovation is the exciting part, right? I would rather use the word learning instead of education, right? One of the ways in which I personally look at, I don't look at nouns, I try and look at verbs. Verbs are active, right? So to educate is to do something to somebody else. To learn is to do something to yourself. So to me, what you do to yourself is a more powerful and a more sustainable thing, perhaps. So, I was just looking at education and learning, and I think innovation and learning is probably an even more exciting way of looking at it. If there is a proper use of technology, an interesting and innovative use of technology that can result in sustainable increase in learning, which in turn obviously will translate into a whole bunch of other stuff, including formal education, certifications, degrees, diplomas, and so on and so forth. But the key to this whole thing is learning. And I'm going to touch upon that again as we go down the line. And the third part is collaboration. The epitome of collaboration in education used to be the canteen, right? How many of you here have spent a substantial portion of your time when you were studying in canteens? Right, see? The others are shy to put their hands up, The ones that did put their hands up were the honest ones, right? Every one of us has, right? And canteens represented the epitome of collaboration, right? Now, we did many other things, leave that aside, but besides that, there was this extraordinary amount of energy that got channelized into solving the world's problems, into really looking at life very, very differently, imagining, creating possibilities. That entire spectrum of collaboration today has got translated or transformed into something where technology is going to aid a lot. One simple example of that, I was looking at the slides that I had put up. I don't know if you saw the first slides that I had put up. When I started my career, a slide of that kind, which kind of introduced, TiE, will have, or an advertisement or a brochure, will have at the bottom, call us at, or let's say call and give a phone number, right or wrong? That's what it was when I started my career, which of course shows that I'm a very ancient guy. It happened many, 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 many years ago, right? It just had a phone number. And sometime after that, that got translated and, they will say, visit us at, right? And we'll give a website. Or contact us at, and they will give a email ID. Now the interesting thing today that I saw, I didn't find a phone number, I didn't find a Thai Bangalore website URL, right? I did not find an email ID. Gayatri says, please contact me, right? What I did find was 4 square boxes in the right corner, which said connect with us at. And it had Facebook, it had LinkedIn, it had, which are the other two? Twitter and Google Groups, yes. Those 4 were the ones. So look at the transformation within a professional lifetime, right? We have moved from the entire concept of linking with people has moved dramatically away from telephone. Now, we all know this. None of this is new. We all know this. But education is a little different. How many of you over the last, let's say, 2 years have personally been involved one way or the other in getting an admission either for your kid in school or for somebody in your family or a friend in college? Right. How many of you found that to be an easy and a pleasant experience? See the fun? Right? The world has moved on. Even Thai is saying connect with us at, right? First I would say that that's what their job is. But look at what's happening in education. Not a single hand went up. I had about 50% of people here putting their hand. The moment I asked who is engaged with education, not even one hand went up. If there is a sector that's ripe for transformation, if there is a sector that's ripe for disruptive transformation, it's the education sector. Except there is one small problem. Nobody has figured out who's going to pay. I was doing a quick analysis with somebody who's in the know of NASSCOM's. I'm allowed to use NASSCOM's name now? We're all friends? Okay. Just wanted to know. NASSCOM's, what is that, 10,000 startups program that they're running. So I was talking to somebody who in the know of those startups, and I was told the largest number of startups that have got registered are startups in the education sector. Out of the 10,000, I think they've got many more than 10,000. I don't know the number, but I do remember it to be at least significantly 2-3 times more than that, filtered ones. And of this, the largest number is from education. Obviously, every one of us feels very strongly about this, or many people feel very strongly about it. The fact that this auditorium is virtually full is a clear indication of the fact that a special interest group on education draws a lot of interest. And you're all here because you'd like to be entrepreneurs, you'd like to examine ideas that are entrepreneurial, and you would like to participate in the entrepreneurial process in one way or the other, either as an entrepreneur or funding the entity or in some other way. Clearly there is interest. Why aren't there successes so far? Right? Why aren't there significant successes so far? People talk about failures, of course. Failures tend to grab much more headlines. But why aren't there sufficient number of successes? I think the significant reason for that is in this statement, which is the connecting of innovation to education, and doing that through collaboration. If you look at the higher education, segment, just step back and look at it, right? Again, ask another question. How many of you here have studied in the US? Did your undergrad here? You went to the US, did your master's, or more? A few of you here, right? I know, Prashant, you went there. Now, that was classical of an era where the word mobility stood for people who were mobile, right? So we are the third generation of mobility as a word, and that's what I wanted to start that off. A thought process in your mind, and hopefully the panel will address it after that. You had people traveling from here to the US, studying there, carrying with them aspirations and bringing back, if they decided to come back, that is, of course. They came back, carrying back with them knowledge, qualifications, of course, credentials, relationships, and experience. They carried that back. And the combination of this, in many instances, especially when they became entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs within an organization, successful executives, translated again into something that was beneficial to the society at large, multiple sectors here. The second level of mobility that happened was when the internet, really came into being, right? So instead of just people being mobile, traveling and studying, you suddenly had institutions reach out back because of the internet, and therefore the ethos of the institution, at least in part, was suddenly available to students perhaps sitting here in India, right? So there were plenty of people here. I know the early movers there, for example. I'm trying to remember some of the universities which are, over the last 15 years or so, they have been engaging with India, conducting programs, offering, degree courses, master's courses, and so on and so forth. So the ethos of that institution, and hopefully along with that, some of what I spoke about earlier, which is knowledge, which is relationships and experience, got moved, that became mobile and came here when everybody was sitting here. But you still had to be perhaps registered in an institution. Your own tethering was very clearly here with an institution. You had to be tied to an institution here, but you could still get the advantage of absorbing the ethos of an institution from outside India. What's happening today is the third generation. It's beginning to happen today. And one example of it, as I was chatting with some people, is the MOOC. What's happening today is that the reason for the tethering, you know what tethering is, right? You get connected, you get tied in. The tethering of the institution appears to be beginning to weaken, and the need for such tethering is suddenly beginning to disappear. And that, to me, is one of the greatest possibilities that exist in front of us from an innovation perspective, from a mobility perspective. Now your ideas and your aspirations and even your connectedness with institutions suddenly becomes truly mobile. Mobility suddenly takes on a completely different meaning. Of course, the other side of it, BYOD, right? You bring your own device, you connect yourself up, and then therefore you can potentially transform yourself into the new generation learner, right? And what does the new generation learner tell, the institutions? What does the new generation learner expect from these MOOCs? She is saying, I'd like to learn at my own pace, correct? I'd like to learn at my own pace. Flexibility is going to be critical to me. I'd like to learn at my own pace. She's saying, I'd like to be able to learn wherever I am. So I'd like to be able to learn at my place, right? I need to be connected. So I'll be looking at Vodafone to connect me. I'll be looking at a tablet device to help me get connected, a smartphone, a phablet, or whatever is the latest variant that you have. And therefore, wherever I am becomes my place. So not only will I be interested in studying at my pace, and I'd like to do it from my place. And that's the second thing. But most interestingly, which is the third, I'd like to do so, she's saying, I'd like to do so by engaging with people that I like, by engaging with people that I'd like to be connected with, by engaging with people that I'd like to collaborate with. So that's my space. So not only it's my pace, and I want to learn at my place, but it also has to be in my space, right? And it has to be in a manner that is consistent with my needs and my aspirations at that point in time. Once we understand the context of what's happening, and this is higher ed, of course, bulk of it is higher ed, but something very similar is happening on the K-12 side as well. In fact, a lot more exciting stuff is happening on the K-12 side. The focus on learning is a lot more on K-12, frankly, than in the higher ed, as it appears to, at least my observation seems to indicate. I've spent the last maybe about a year or so trying to understand the K-12 space. Still a long way away from really getting a good understanding, but it seems to me that the sheer power of imagination can be applied a lot more on the K-12 space. The numbers are in favor. Just take India alone. Nearly 240 million kids study in schools in India. 240 million. Large number. As against that, the comparison is exact 1/10. About 23 million students actually study in higher ed institutions in India. So 10 times more is the total pool that you can impact. There are 1.2 million schools in India, as against about 650 universities and about 30,000 colleges and about 10 to 15,000 other institutes, the MBA institutes and so on and so forth. As against that, about 50,000, let us say roughly 50 to 60,000 higher ed institutions, you have 1.2 million schools. Of course, a large number of those schools are government schools, and that in itself brings a challenge. But still, it's a very, very large number of people that can be impacted gainfully. Of course, if you were to run a for-profit company wanting to take advantage of this, you'll have to ask the question, who's going to pay? That's a fundamental question that you have to keep on asking, who's going to pay? Right? And that's a question which is a tough question to answer. And that's an important question that you need to find answers to. To me, therefore, Where's Rajesh? He's going to kill me if I keep on talking. To me, therefore, all the 4 words that I was trying to touch upon here: innovation, education, and learning, 2 sides of the same coin; collaboration, and doing it through mobility. These 4 key words all are pregnant with potential. The amount of intrinsic possibilities that exist out of a combination of these 4 is unbelievable. The numbers are there for you. The other interesting thing about education, this is more true from a higher ed perspective, and it's a little less because of the cultural differences in the K-12 side. It tends to get evened out a little bit when you reach a higher ed situation, is that what you innovate in education, and if you're able to translate that into a sustainable organization, is something that can be applied not just in India, but elsewhere as well. One of the biggest opportunities that India as a nation has got, right, is the one of truly becoming influential in the global scheme of things, not just through a population size, saying 1.2 billion people and therefore demanding that you need a permanent membership in Security Council, but by influencing through the most sustainable of soft powers, that's education. India has an amazing opportunity to create a model by embracing education, embracing tenets of governance, embracing nimbleness and innovation in such a strong way that in turn that can become a model that can be a beacon for the emerging marketplace. Think about it. Higher education, globally speaking, is essentially been what stuff that has happened, models that have been created in the US. What you see as a university today is a model that was created in the US roughly about 400 years back. Okay, the first of the universities which created this model was Harvard, and the same Harvard model, in some way or the other, is what you have today in most of the biggest influence, let me put it that way, right? And then you have the Oxfords and Cambridges on the other side. Essentially, these 3 have contributed to virtually 100% of the influence of the way in which universities are structured everywhere in the world, right? There has not been an alternate model. Tell me anything else which is for 400 years hasn't changed. So there is a tremendous possibility for creating a completely new way of doing things here. Of course, we will have the issues with the regulators. Of course, we will have a challenge with ancient people occupying positions of power in Delhi who really seem to be only interested in slowing you down. But when did these things ever stop a good entrepreneur? They never did. And to my mind, the reason why I get really excited with education, to my mind, the great excitement is the fact that it is possible for us to potentially create a new model that can be a beacon to the rest of the emerging world. And that is exciting to me. It's enough of talk. Here's the real opportunity. What can we do with it? And then you bung in mobility. Think about it, And we were just laughing about the Bangalore traffic and how I came early, right, considerably early. And it appeared 5:34 I was here, and I was mentioning to Gayatri here that I completely underestimated the Bangalore traffic. Life, in the US it's weather, in Bangalore it's traffic, right? Life revolves around traffic, and most conversation openers, start with traffic, right? We should get out of all this. There is the challenge of people moving from one place to another to do things. And why would we make it? My son today, he's in the 10th grade. My son today, we shifted schools for him. One of the reasons was because every day he was spending 2 hours and 15 minutes on the bus, going and coming from school. To me, that's about 12 to 15% of his waking time. It was a absolutely criminal loss of time. So we have now improved dramatically. He spends 1.5 hours now. And I find the whole thing extremely silly. Why is it that he can't go to school for 4 days a week, right, or 3.5 days a week, and use technology to spend more time, right, and then discover stuff? Their version of research, as they say, is research. Their version of research is to look at Wikipedia, right? Anyway, to me, all of this, just tells you that the amount of possibilities that exist is incredible. I think today's panel is going to touch upon, I hope, what mobility can offer, right, and the tremendous range of opportunities that can potentially exist. And When we take advantage of this and when we create institutions, organizations of excellence which are truly pathbreakers, I think we would have contributed individually and collectively to this notion that education as a soft power is probably the biggest single opportunity India has in influencing the global scheme of things. Thank you.
We have about 5 minutes for questions if anyone has any questions for us.
There's one.
Sorry.
So I just want to share my experience. That's like very, which has changed my entire life. Because my graduation days, one of my friend,
Go ahead, Akish.
One of my friend, he was a businessman. We did our graduation from Xavier's, and after passing out, he was asking me, what next? And of course, I'm going to do my PG course. I will do my MBA. He asked me from where. I don't know. Let's hope. It would be school to do that. But what about you? Told me, boss, I already have my own vision and my business going on. I'm going to invest in that. And if you want to join me, please come. So I asked him what kind of business you're going to do. I'm going to start a wholesale business of clothes. Okay. And what kind of investments you're looking at for? Something around 6 to 8 lakhs as a startup. And what's the ROI? Probably a 40% at least. Minimum expected. After that, I told boss, it's not my piece of cake. Let me move ahead. I'll do an MBA, then I'll come back to you. Today, when I went there, it was like after 2 years, when I went back to him, he was a millionaire. And I was just like an MBA pass out with a single job in my hand. Like, I was thinking whether my MBA has tested me or he has given me a complete ROI, or whether my decision which not to join him was bad now.
ROI stands for right to introspect. You've got good ROI, don't worry. You've got good ROI there. There are always point examples there. Right? So, Bill Gates, I'm told, is a dropout. Which are the dropouts? Found many dropouts, right?
Yes.
So if you want to be successful, you have to drop out of school. Actually there is an interesting. Sorry?
There is a study done. So the 3 or 4 common pieces for all the entrepreneurs is they were dropouts.
Mm-hmm.
They used to smoke
Dope.
in college and had failed on one of their very early startups.
Early startups. I would agree with the third, but I'm not sure about the first and the second.
But they are dropouts from very good
Drop out of which school? That's a good point. Prashant saying if you're dropping out from Stanford, you kind of got to be kind of okay. Which is what Bill Gates did. Sorry, you were asking.
Yeah. So one question, Anand, is that for any technology like solution in the learning space, 2 challenges that come really big time is one is infrastructure. That Indian students, especially in the college, still don't have personal computers. They're not using tablets, smart devices, and even some companies have started putting their applications into like these devices instead. Then comes the challenge of behavior, where Indian students are still not oriented towards using these products for learning. So, have you any solutions you have seen working in the space which address these 2 challenges?
I think the biggest solution is easy availability. Access and easy availability is the biggest solution. IRCTC, you heard of the site? IRCTC is probably Prashant, is it the largest e-commerce site in India? Something close to it, isn't it? One of the largest for sure. Flipkart now, okay. So, it's IRCTC is spectacularly successful. I mean, how did people start using IRCTC? Because remember the kind of people who go in a train, etc., it's a very wide spectrum. To me, I agree with you. We also expect overnight changes. I think that's one of the mistakes that we do is to expect that dramatic and overnight change. To me, I think making technology available easily, access, make it. Akash, for example, is a honestly at core is a phenomenal program. Now the execution sucks big time. It's a different problem altogether. But honestly, at core, it's something spectacularly good. because that will one fell swoop remove access issue. Take Vodafone, who's from Vodafone, right? So you are, how many registered connections in India? About 850 million? So 850 million registered, all operators, about 850 million connection. I used to be at an era where to make a trunk call, I had to go to my post office here, which was about 1.5 kilometers away from my home. And I can remember it like yesterday. So it's a dramatic change, and access is brought there. To me, in education, get the access out there, just wait and watch, things will begin to happen. Because the kids today are a very different generation. They grow with all this. It's not everybody. There is this big, the Bharat India and whatever phrases that you're fond of, you can use them. But honestly, given us even the slightest of exposure, the extent to which they infuse this into their DNA is spectacular. I think it will begin to happen. I'm very optimistic on that.
Just a question about that. As online education becomes popular, less students go to school. What are the social skills? Because there's less interaction with their friends or other students. What could be the impact in terms of behavioral skills and leadership skills in the future?
I think the set of skills will change dramatically. That's a very worrisome factor. Human relationships, especially filial, family relationships, are completely changing. My son has no clue what even the one generation above the extended family, he has no idea, or he has very little idea. And the only people for whom he has some idea are his friends in Facebook. So, and that's the one that drives him. So this is, I think, going through a fundamental shift and a change. I think the human engagement context is going through a change. Like all, at least I have reached a stage when you look back and hearken to the good old days, Manna, they passed away today, so to me yesterday, so to me, the big day of sorrow, we were just chatting about the Fab Four and, Mohammad Rafi and Kishore Kumar and Hemanta Mukherjee, and to me, some of this is also the hearkening back to the good old days, that piece of it is there. If you can just get out of that and recognize that everything is anyway changing, I think there will be a new set of new paradigm, new set of rules, new kind of relationships that will start. But it's scary, irrespective of whatever you say or whatever I say, it's scary. It's scary.
You began with that question of why is it so difficult to find the right school or college for your kid?
Right.
How is technology going to improve
Information and transparency. The biggest challenge that you have with finding a good school is you don't know. You don't have information. I don't mean basic information that all the institutions put up in their website. That doesn't even represent 10% of the information that you need. You don't have information. And you don't have transparency to the information. If these two are available, and that is supported with a rubric or a mechanism by which people are assisted, helped, counseled, in a pathway towards understanding that more and more, and it will automatically happen. Just a matter of time, somebody will figure it out. This combination, I think, is what is needed. It's not there in education as yet. I was researching, I'm going to put up a media server, so I wanted to understand. I had not looked at hardware for, frankly, a couple of years now. So I was just trying to come up with speed on Xeon server workstations and so on and so on. Whatever I wanted, I just needed to spend about 2 hours on the net. Whatever I wanted was available. Really, from price to this to that, and I was looking at SATA drives and what's the price of a 2 TB SATA drive, it's all there. If you want to know one Seagate family to another Seagate family, and I'm looking at it after 2 years. Try the same thing with education. You will, after the first level of information, there is a kind of you will come to a wall. You have to break that wall. And I think some stuff that the government is trying to do, this is really not the government. It really has to happen through entrepreneurs, who will suck out that information and make it available, and also add on other services over and above that, so that as parents, and more importantly as pupils, people will be confident taking their own choices. And choice, the best definition of freedom that I've ever read is the ability for individuals to make an informed choice, right? We have choice today. We don't have informed choice. We don't have information. You just have to make that out. That make sense?
I don't know. What about the supply side constraint?
Not a problem. It's getting resolved. There are 1.7 lakh engineering seats available in India. This year, close to 500,000 of them have gone empty.
Yeah, but that's exactly the supply side constraint.
So the thing is, what you are talking about is, so what you're talking about as supply side is the best of the best. But the definition of the best is the supply side will be limited. You see, when it comes to our own children, I'd like my son to be, I mean, he's not, but I'd like my son to be the first in the class of 30. There, I would like to have a constraint that is placed. I don't want all the 30 to have first rank. But when it comes to supply in terms of availability of institutional seats, I'd like more IITs to be available, or I'd like my son, wherever he stands, to get into an IIT. This is a conundrum, and that's how it will be. Education is about pyramids. There will always be a capstone, right? And by definition, a pyramid will have to have a capstone, right? You can make the pyramid flat, but it's still a pyramid. It will have something on top. So to that extent, supply constraints will be there on the best of institutions. So we have cracked to me, quantity precedes quality. In any fast-growing, economy like India, quantity has to precede quality, consumer side, right? And you can see it in everything in consumer side, consumption-driven stuff. Quantity will always precede quality. I think we have done a good job with quantity. Quality will start. And moment demand, and supply kind of become equal, overall supply I'm talking about, not the, choice, but overall supply. Then the, economics will start playing the real role and quality will start coming out. Give it another few years. May not help you and I with our children perhaps, that I totally grant. Just give it a few more years and you will suddenly, with transparency, more information, I think the whole thing will step out.
I don't think we can take any more questions. I'm so sorry. We're running out of time. Anand, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.